'cause there is life abundance, life abundance.
Sentinels is probably going bankrupt by Christmas at the latest. Sooner, actually, if this crowdfunding they're going after doesn't work. So let's get right into it, okay? Here's episode 1 of Karmy's Corner. It is a new sort of show we're putting together where it's basically myself talking about current situations and events in the esports landscape, tie it back to what's going on with Aftermath Esports as well, and try and give some insight into what's going on in the world of esports. So if you're unaware, basically Sentinels has released a report saying that they're running out of money. They are spending about $700,000 a month right now and only bringing in about a gross revenue of like $1.9 million. And it gets way worse than that. Okay? Their spending budget is way out of whack. Their money in is way higher than money out, and they're struggling. So jumping right into it, we got this white paper basically for this common stock sell-off they're trying to do. It's going to be a public sale for the most part. You can see here that they're trying to sell off 392,000 shares of common stock at an estimated $1.234 million. So $3.15 per share of the security offered, which I think currently is incredibly overvalued. But when they're trying to do a private sale like this, they don't have to go by any sort of initial public offering or anything like that. The stock price is really what they decide to sell it at and what people agree. So each one of these tiers, they have a bunch of different tiers here depending how much money you spend. You get some like jerseys, bat jackets, some other things like that as well. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in this frame because they're trying to raise funds to keep the company going, right? When they're bringing funds in and then giving out jerseys and jackets and stuff like that, it's cutting down the actual cost of well, not the cost, but the amount that they are able to generate to keep the company afloat. And as I read through this whole page or this whole document, all 79 pages of it, I kind of realized that your investment in this is going to get basically burned. If you're a fan of Sentinels and you want to help contribute, you want to give money to keep it afloat, you have to understand that money is getting burned, right? This is not going to be a positive ROI unless they can somehow get through this very dark time without going bankrupt. You might in the future, but you're looking like 10 years down the road. And with everything you put into it now, they've even like outlined in this document here that they're going to have to raise more funds in the future, right? So if they bring in additional investors, they're also going to need to dilute the actual funds or the shares that are offered. So that is going to inherently just kill value at that $3.15. Like I said, that's already very overpriced, but it's going to get even worse if they have to bring on additional investors. And they're talking about that if they aren't able to make up this money and they can't get the money they need to, there's $1.2 million, I think, is only going to keep them afloat for an additional 2 to 3 months. They talk about how at current burn rate, they can only really operate for another couple months, 2 to 3 months. And if they raise this money, it's 4 to 5 months, right? And if they don't do that, they might have to just go bankrupt, shut the doors, try and sell everything off. They might have to just try and completely rework their game plan. But at the end of the day, it's looking really bad for Sentinels here. So I'm going to get right into the actual balance sheet of what they're doing here and kind of break down what they've done. So if you see at the bottom here, the net income / net loss in 2022, they're at a loss at $8.2 million is what they've burned. And they only brought in 1.9 of gross revenue. They had $507,000 in cost of goods sold. And I think most of that was all apparel. I'm pretty sure the only profit they really brought in last year was apparel. They're not bringing on big advertisements like 100 Thieves. They're not signing big brand deals. So they're trying to build up the IP, and I understand why they're trying to do it. But when you have $21 million of investments that have come in since 2020, and you burn through that in 3 years, you have to like take a step back and realize that just trying to build up an IP brand is not working. You need to sign these brand deals. They need to have money coming in. They're simply not doing that. And you can see with this here, like their sales and marketing is less than $200,000. Like they're supposed to be a media company. That's what esports is. You're supposed to be an advertising revenue or different advertising stream for big companies. That's where you build this brand. Everybody does it. You know, the Dallas Cowboys, they're a $5 billion franchise and they advertise everything. That's where they make their money. I mean, they have like ticket sales and they have merchandising at a higher level, but they still advertise like crazy through their IP, right? Sentinels is sadly not doing that. And I think it's weird that they're trying to crowdfund rather than just sign some big corporate brand deals. Because like if you look through their social media stuff, so we'll just take their YouTube for example, right? They have 700,000 subscribers, right? And their videos get good viewership. They actually do average very well for viewership, but there's no advertising. They have Starforge system as the only one, and I can't imagine that company being big enough to really fund a whole lot what they're doing here. But all of these videos, I went through and checked some on them. Their podcasts do not have mid-roll ads. None of these things advertise for anything. So this 186,000 view video, outside of what they get for ad revenue off of YouTube, is completely lost in it. They didn't really monetize that the way they could be. If you look at 100 Thieves, the first thing you notice is that they have obviously double the subscribers, but they pull in less viewership, but they're advertising for these massive companies. AT&T, JBL, Lexus, Subway, all of these are huge companies, right? They're probably paying premium dollars to be on this banner alone and also part of 100 Thieves, right? So if you go through and look at that sort of aspect of it, I feel like Sentinels is just not monetizing what they already have. So why not go and sign these bigger brand deals to bring that capital in rather than selling off part of your company, right? That's going to not work in the long run because you're selling off this common stock. You're selling off, I think they said 300,000, yeah, almost 400,000 shares of common stock. I don't know what their like maximum lottage is. I know they have that spread out between the CEO and a holding company, but when you sell off 400,000 shares, that takes it off the table for what you can actually sell to future investors. So you're kind of limiting what's available in the future, where I think that they could just try to monetize their brand better. And I don't know why they're not doing that. They have no actual like brand deals at all. It's crazy. And if you go through and see that, yeah, most of the money that they made here was through merchandising, right? So they're $2.4 million. I'm pretty sure that almost all of that was in sales from merch, and that cost $500,000 to produce, right? Their teams are not winning money, so they're not taking back in from results. Like this is their Valorant roster here, right? This probably cost them a shit ton of money because they have tens and they have a great team and stuff, right? But look what they've won this year alone, 2023. Nothing. They've done nothing. And without having their Valorant teams doing anything, right? Like $10,000 is what they've won so far, right? Took 17th to 32nd in VCT earlier this year. And they took 7th in the group stages. They only took 4th in a qualifier. $10,000 in versus probably like $250,000, $300,000 a month is what they're spending. I would say like all in. I don't have those numbers, right? But I mean, they said their burn rate was $700,000 a month. I would say probably a third of that is from their Valorant team. It's full of heavy hitters that's costing them a lot of money, and they're not having the results or the money back in to make that worthwhile, right? Like I said, they're not making the money back they need to on the merchandising. We've already seen that, right? It's clear in their balance books here. I don't know what they've done so far in 2023, right? But I'm sure as hell that they've been on the same spending rate since the beginning of the year, if not more, right? Depending on who they've signed and all the stuff that it's cost them, right? Even if you go back 2022, $16,000 in tournament winnings. 2021, this was a bit better, right? $200,000 for their win in Reykjavik, right? This is a way better year. You're probably looking at well over $300,000 for this year, but like that still gets eaten up probably almost in a month of operations, right? So it's really shocking for me to see this as an esports org owner myself. How are you not bringing in more money with how much money you've spent, right? We go back to the same form here. They're in the negative last year, $8.2 million. Where did that go, right? They have nothing for sales and marketing. It's all general and administrative, meaning that's like all their staff and obviously their content creators, their teams and all that stuff, right? But they also don't have any real assets to hold on to. I think in a previous slide, it said they spent $55,000 last year on assets, right? So what are you really generating with this money you spent out? What was the long-term game plan? They had $21 million nest egg to work out of. If you're operating at like $1 million a year loss, which is where you want to be, right? Because as a new growing company, you don't want to show profit, right? You don't want to be paying tax on any of your revenue. So yeah, you want to be in a loss state, right? When you have $21 million to work with, if you lose $1 million a year, you have 20 years to operate, right? But when you're using that in 3 years with no more money coming in, no real new objectives coming out, right? Like you could have seen at the end of 2021, your burn rate was way too high. 2022, it's even worse. What was your plan going into 2023, right? Because when you come into this and you already knew you've burnt through what is this, like $15 million almost, right? $14.5 million in the past 2 years. Where are you going to turn that around? Because you know every time you spend money, that gap you have, that nest egg is getting smaller and smaller and smaller towards zero. So why would you wait so long to try and find new activations for money? And why coming to a crowd-funded stock sell-off, right? That seems like it's also the worst possible situation. Why sell off equity of the company when you can just bring in more through brand deals that you're currently not doing? You're simply not doing it. And like I said, they have their other rosters are not doing anything either. Their Apex Legends team didn't do shit all this year. He brought in 6150 all year so far for that team. I don't know what their salary is, probably pretty expensive. Their last year as well, nothing. Like they didn't really do anything in 2022 either, right? Still costing them crazy money. They're just operating at a massive loss. Their Halo team, same thing, right? Their Halo team has a lot of really high name players if you're into the Halo space. Who knows what they're paying these guys per month, but they're certainly not bringing it back in. And if their entire business model is based off of selling merchandise and jerseys and shit, that's not really not doing it for them. So they need to pull the 100 Thieves route. They need to sell out some of their namesake. They need to put some branding on those jerseys, right? Because if you look at their actual website, they don't have anything of the sort. They have nothing on their jerseys. It's actually kind of unreal. We go to their shop with their pro jerseys. Look at this, nothing. Where's the advertising? They need to be doing like this right here. $100,000 a month they probably sell that for right here, if not more, if not way more. Sentinels is a massive brand. Both these arms are worth a shit ton of ad revenue or ad space. This whole area could be the backside of it. There's so much to do that they're not exploring right now. And it kind of blows my mind that they're not. Like there's G Fuel. There's a G Fuel sponsor. How much are they paying them? Probably not enough, clearly. So I don't know. The state that we're in with esports as a whole right now, and as an org owner myself, it's frustrating to watch this happen, because if Sentinels has to shut their doors, right, that's going to look bad for future investors, future sponsors wanting to get into this space, because all these big teams are failing. CLG happened earlier this year. Sentinels coming up right now. If we don't get better usage of the funds coming in, it's going to stop happening. People are going to start to hold on to their money. They'll be way more afraid. And I think it's good. Like, you have to slow down the spending. The player salary inflation is out of control right now. People have such high expectations of what they should be getting paid, how much money's in the space. People trying to compensate that, but it's just not viable for the long term. It's not sustainable in any sense. We're seeing that now. It's starting to turn around and bite them in the butt. And I think it has to happen. There's going to be a bubble that does kind of implode a lot of these bigger teams, that their spend rate is way too high compared to what they're bringing in. It has to kind of come down, because it's just not viable, right? So moving forward with Sentinels, I don't see a way that they get out of this alive, unless they sign big brand deals and they get some people with big money to come and bail them out and save them. I don't see them, with their current strategy, making it even until Christmas. So I just don't want to see them fail. Obviously, I'm a big Sentinels fan. I think they're a great team, but I think the CEO should have taken stock of where they were earlier last year and realized something major had to change, that what they were doing wasn't working. And I don't really know what the long-term goal was, because you had like an hourglass behind you. When you knew you had $21 million to work with, you're spending that, a third of that every year, you knew you had to be able to at least break even or start to slow that burn down way sooner than now, right? So I don't know. It's frustrating. It's sad to see. I hope they can figure it out. But as far as a outsider looking in, I would not be giving them money, because that's, like I said, unless you're a fan and want to see them succeed, you're burning your money. It's not an investment. It's a donation. It's a charity, right? At this point, don't give them your money expecting anything in return, because it's just not happening. Anyways, that was my rant for this. This actually kind of blew my mind when I read through all this. If you want to read this entire white paper, I'll link it in the description below. 79 pages. It's a really dry read, but it's very informative to see where they're at, where their money went, and some of the legalities they're trying to push forward about this actual sale here. But other than that, unfortunately, I think Sentinels is on the way out, and I think that's going to cause a bit of a ripple effect for people pulling their money out. Unfortunately, people are going to lose their jobs. There's a lot of investor money that's just going down the drain, basically. I think the CEO is very heavily to blame for this one. I don't know what they're operating at, but His salary, I think it said, was $360,000, and he owns 20% of the company. I think Robert Moore has a lot to do with downfall of its current space. But who knows? I don't want to be the one to point fingers, but someone has to be held accountable for how terribly all this money's been mishandled. And we'll see how this crowdfunding sale goes. I'm personally not going to give them any money because I think they'll just continue to spend it irresponsibly, and it's not a good investment for my personal financial future. But anyways, found this video helpful at all, insightful? If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, want to keep the conversation going on down in the comments, I'd appreciate it. And always, if you subscribe, like, share the video, try to get the word out there, trying to grow the channel with this new show here. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day, and see you in the next one.